Hello and welcome back to Chess Tactic Today. In round 11 of the titled Tuesday Grand Prix 2025-2026, we've got a blitz classic, Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura. The game kicks off with the English opening but quickly turns razor sharp as queens come off early and both players maneuver for control. Carlsen presses with piece activity, while Nakamura fights back with resourceful defense and counterplay. Two of the biggest names in chess go head-to-head in a fast, tactical showdown. Let's see how the battle unfolds. Very first move. And Carlsen opens with pawn to c4, the English opening. A very flexible choice, aiming to control the center from the flank rather than occupying it directly. Nakamura immediately responds with pawn to e5, steering the game into a reversed Sicilian structure where black gets to play with an extra tempo. White goes for the fianchetto with pawn to g3, preparing to develop the bishop to g2, where it will control the long diagonal. This is a signature setup for Carlsen. In response, black develops the knight to f6, a natural move that controls the center and prepares for castling. The bishop arrives on g2, right on schedule. It's now a monster piece, slicing across the board and eyeing black's queenside. Nakamura plays pawn to c6, a very solid move. He's preparing to challenge white's central control by getting ready to play d5. Carlsen strikes in the center first with pawn to d4, not waiting for black to do so. This creates immediate tension and forces black to make a decision. And Nakamura chooses to resolve the tension right away. Pawn takes pawn on d4. Queen takes d4. White brings the queen out early, but it's not a major issue here as black can't easily harass it. Now black plays pawn to d5, staking his own claim in the center and challenging white's queen. White develops the knight to f3, adding another piece to the fight for the central squares. An interesting choice from Nakamura, knight to a6. It looks a bit strange on the rim, but the idea is to control the c5 square and perhaps jump to b4 later. Carlsen castles kingside, getting his king to safety, a very standard and sensible developing move. Black develops the bishop to c5, putting pressure on white's f2 pawn and asking the white queen where it wants to go. Queen to e5 with check. Carlsen forces the issue, initiating a series of trades that will drastically simplify the position. Nakamura is happy to oblige, blocking the check with his queen. He's not afraid of the coming exchanges. White captures on d5, and this decision will shape the rest of the game. Watch what happens to black's pawn structure. Queen takes queen on e5. The queens are off the board, and we are heading into an endgame much earlier than expected. Knight takes queen on e5. The dust from the trades is beginning to settle, and knight takes d5. Black recaptures, and we now have a very clear picture of the strategic battle ahead. Knight to d3. A subtle but strong move by Carlsen, developing his knight and putting pressure on black's active bishop on c5. The bishop retreats to b6, keeping its influence on the long diagonal while stepping out of harm's way. Bishop takes knight on d5. Carlsen decides to trade off black's knight, but this comes at a cost. And after pawn takes bishop, we see the result. Black now has an isolated pawn on d5. This pawn can be a weakness, but as we'll see, it can also become a great strength. White immediately puts pressure on that d5 pawn with knight to c3. Carlsen's plan is clear. Target the weakness. Nakamura defends logically with bishop to e6. The pawn is now secure, and the bishop finds a nice active square. Knight to a4 from Carlsen. He's going after black's strong bishop on b6, trying to eliminate another one of black's active pieces. The bishop retreats to d8. It's a bit passive for now, but Nakamura is keeping his options open. White develops the bishop to f4, controlling key squares and preparing to put more pressure on black's position. Nakamura repositions his own bishop to e7, a useful move that prepares to challenge white's control of the c-file. Rook to c1. Carlsen seizes the open c-file, a classic strategic idea. Doubling rooks here is something you can use in your own games. Nakamura castles kingside, finally getting his king to safety and connecting his rooks. Bishop to e5, a very annoying move, pinning the f6 knight and restricting black's pieces. And Nakamura immediately contests the c-file with rook to c8. He's not going to let white dominate that file without a fight. The knight hops into f4, a great outpost. From here, it puts pressure on e6 and d5. Counterplay, knight to b4 from Nakamura, creating his own threats against the c2 pawn. Knight to c3. Carlsen defends c2 and continues to build pressure on the center. The position is incredibly tense. Bishop to g5. A fantastic move from Nakamura, pinning the f4 knight and creating new problems for white. Bishop to d6, attacking the knight on c6. Carlsen is trying to untangle his position by forcing more exchanges. The knight simply steps back to c6, a cool and calm response under pressure. Rook to d1. White shifts the pressure to the d-file, once again targeting that d5 pawn. Nakamura decides to trade. Bishop takes the knight on f4, eliminating one of white's most active pieces. Bishop takes f4. And now, this is where the game truly ignites. Black's next move changes everything. And now, black plays pawn to d4. This is the moment the entire game has been building towards. That once isolated pawn now becomes a terrifying passed pawn, splitting white's position in two. It's a huge risk, but Nakamura senses this is his chance to seize the initiative. Knight to b5. Carlsen immediately attacks the pawn, trying to prove it's a weakness, not a strength. Black brings the rook to d8 to support the passed pawn. It's now an unstoppable force. Rook to d2. White prepares to double rooks on the d-file to blockade and attack the d4 pawn. Nakamura plays rook to d7, a very clever multi-purpose move. It prepares to double his own rooks and also keeps an eye on the 7th rank. Pawn to b3, a quiet move from Carlsen to secure his queenside and prevent any knight jumps. Black doubles rooks on the d-file. Now it's a full-scale war over the control of this file and the fate of the d4 pawn. White does the same, rook to d1. The board is now a pressure cooker, with all four rooks staring each other down. Pawn to a6, kicking the white knight away from its active post on b5. The knight is forced back to a 3, a much more passive square. Black has gained a small but important victory. Pawn to f6. Nakamura solidifies his kingside and takes away the e5 square from any of white's pieces. Carlsen advances with h4, looking to create some weaknesses on the king side. Nakamura immediately puts a stop to it with h6. This is a battle for every square. Pawn to h5. This creates a target. Would you have played this? It looks aggressive, but watch how it backfires. Bishop to g4, a beautiful move, pinning the f3 pawn and further increasing the pressure. White's knight reroutes to c2, trying to get back into the game, and there's the punishment. Bishop takes the h5 pawn. Nakamura is now a pawn up, and Carlsen's earlier aggression has been refuted. White plays pawn to f3, breaking the pin but creating new weaknesses around his king. And now, get ready for the real fireworks. Hold on a second. Pawn to d3. What a move from Nakamura. At first glance, it looks like he's just giving away his prized passed pawn. But look closer. This is a brilliant simplification tactic. He forces a cascade of trades that will leave him with a strategically winning endgame. This is high-level chess, sacrificing your greatest strength to guarantee victory. Rook takes d3. Carlsen is forced to capture, walking right into Nakamura's plan. Rook takes rook, continuing the liquidation. The board is clearing up fast. And rook takes rook on d3. White is left with a single rook. Rook takes rook. All the rooks are gone in a flash. And after pawn takes d3, the smoke has cleared. The position is completely transformed. Bishop takes f3. Nakamura has a clear advantage now, an extra pawn and a more active king. White brings the king to f2, trying to centralize and hold the position together. Bishop to d5, a fantastic square for the bishop, controlling key diagonals and restricting the white king. King to e3. Carlsen is putting up a stubborn defense, but the position is very difficult. Nakamura begins to roll his kingside pawns with g5. He's creating a second weakness for white to worry about. Bishop to c7. White's bishop tries to find some activity, eyeing the queenside pawns. Black's king marches forward to f7. In the endgame, the king is a powerful attacking piece. Knight to d4, a good centralizing move, but Nakamura has a simple solution. Knight takes knight on d4. He trades off the last minor pieces, heading for a pure bishop and pawn endgame. King takes d4. Now it's all about king activity and pawn breaks. Bishop to c6. A crucial move, restricting the white king and preparing to support his own king's advance. King to e3. Carlsen's king is forced back, and Nakamura's king continues its march forward to e6. This is textbook endgame technique. The white bishop moves to d8, desperately trying to create some counterplay. King to f5. The black king is now deep in white's territory, causing all sorts of problems. King to f2. White is in pure defense mode. The king zigzags to e5, a truly dominant square. White pushes the b-pawn, hoping to create a passed pawn of his own, but it's too little, too late. Nakamura prepares the final breakthrough with pawn to f5. Carlsen's king shuffles to e3, but there's no escape. The final act of this drama is about to unfold. And there it is, f4 check. This is the hammer blow. Nakamura shatters white's pawn structure, creates a passed pawn for himself, and opens up lines for his king. From this point on, white's position is collapsing. This is a masterclass in converting an endgame advantage. Pawn takes f4, a forced move. Pawn takes f4 with check. Black now has a protected passed pawn. The king moves to e2, but it's a grim picture for white. King to f5. The black king is simply a monster. White pushes a pawn on the queenside, but it's a distraction at best. And here comes another wave. Pawn to h5, and now white is being attacked on all fronts. King to f2, but the pawns just keep coming. King to g4. It's almost over. The king is leading the charge. Bishop to b6, a last-ditch effort. The king repositions to f5, ready for the final push. White's bishop is just shuffling back and forth with no real prospects. Bishop to b5. A fantastic move, cutting off the white king and controlling even more squares. King to e2. White can only wait. King back to g4. It's time. King to f2 again. A sad necessity. Bishop takes d3. Nakamura cashes in, winning another pawn. The rest is a matter of technique. White pushes the a-pawn. A final desperate attempt. And the h-pawn marches on. h4, and it's unstoppable. Pawn to a5. Bishop to e4, beautifully controlling the board. Bishop to b6. Bishop to c6, just calmly improving his position. Bishop to c5. King to f5, preparing to escort the pawns home. King to g1, a sad retreat. King to e4. The king is everywhere at once. King to f2, and the h-pawn reaches the third rank. It's almost a new queen. King to g1. King to f3. Its mate in a few moves, or promotion. King to h2, the only move. Bishop to d7. A final, elegant piece of maneuvering. Bishop to d6. King to e3, and white's king is trapped. King to g1, and pawn to f3. There is no defense. The f-pawn will promote, and Carlsen resigns. An absolutely dominant performance by Nakamura. What a game! Nakamura played with incredible precision, turning a small structural nuance into a full-blown attack and a technically flawless endgame victory. A true masterclass in pawn play and strategic simplification. Thanks for joining us on Chess Tactic today, and we'll see you next time.